Stop. Don't go anywhere too fast. It's time to listen to a Head Over the Footy podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to Head Over the Footy. Episode 20 it is. Round 10 is done. It was a lovely round of footy. There were some cracking games and before we get into it all, make sure you jump on our YouTube, subscribe to that. We're also on Spotify where you can listen to our stuff. We release 2 episodes a week. One's a review of the round and then we do our preview where we talk about what's coming up. That one's always entertaining because we put ourselves on the line and there's always some dodgy predictions. But there's also some good predictions as well at times. So make sure you tune in and it really helps us by subscribing or following us. And make sure you turn on the bell as well because that will notify you as to when the episodes have dropped. So we really appreciate all your support. And let's get into it. We got Will Faulkner here. Fox Footy Journo, how are you, Fox?
Yeah, good, thanks, Maxi. How are you going?
Yeah, very well, thanks, mate. It's good to have you back, mate, because you're a hard man to get a hold of. Busy with work and all that, but it's great to have you on. So, you've been keeping well?
Yeah, no, I've been keeping well, thanks, mate. Obviously, busy. It's always busy for all of us in footy season, but it's good to, just another Monday and reviewing the round. And can't ask for much more so far this season. Yeah.
Certainly, and as you said there, reviewing the round, there's so much to review. Some big stories. Port Adelaide and their win on Sunday was remarkable, Forks, as we know. That's one of the things we'll talk about. We've got Harley Reid as well. He's absolutely taking the competition by storm at the moment. We'll talk about if he is the best first-year player ever. We'll discuss that. We'll talk about Collingwood's win and a bit of controversy with Isaac Rankine. He ran too far apparently, but some people aren't too happy about it. The Bombers are second on the ladder. The Dogs beat GWS. Saints are done. They could be done potentially for the season. They're 3-7 after Freo beat them in Melbourne. We'll get into that. And there's a whole lot more as well, which we'll discuss. So we'll also talk about our tipping, and that'll probably wrap us up. But Forks, let's get into it. And the top story from the round, sometimes it's easy to do the top story from the round. Sometimes it's hard to pick what it is. This week, well, we've run with Port Adelaide and their win yesterday on Sunday. What a remarkable win. They kicked 2 goals in the last 30 seconds to win by a point. Did you manage to catch it, and what did you think?
I did. Max, we were actually covering the Essendon North Melbourne game separately yesterday. So I probably didn't catch much of it. You probably didn't catch much of it either. But I did have it up on the big screen in Marvel Stadium, just in the media box. And I caught probably the last 6-7 minutes, and they're sort of just starting to come back. And, it was pretty exceptional. It couldn't have gone much better, I don't think, from that last clearance with Butters. I think any minor mistake there, and it's probably game. So they did very, very well out of the centre clearance. And, Burn Jones was pretty slick with his finish. And it's probably a little bit of pain over the cracks for Port, but you take 4 points whenever you can get them. And I think Hawthorn will definitely feel robbed. But I guess Port on the Port with a better team in the end. But, probably not the type of win they were expecting. I think they probably wanted a little bit more room behind their win.
Well, I think Hawks are up by about, was it 41 points?
I think that was the biggest lead they had.
Yeah, and they coughed it up, which is quite remarkable. But what did you make of the last a minute and a half? I reckon there were a few decisions. Did you manage to catch some of it? Well, I know that we were both working at the North Essendon game, but I thought, did you see some of the holding the balls and that were not paid at the end there?
I'm not sure how far back. I was sort of, again, like half watching. Yeah. I probably can't comment on the umpire's calls as I didn't see too much of them. But, definitely the last 30 seconds. And I definitely caught that, as I think a lot of people have. But were there a couple of holding the balls that you were sort of
on the fence? I thought the Hawks there were 2 in a row that happened in like the same play in the space of 5 seconds. And there was about, I reckon, a minute 20 left. And could have been a free kick to Hawthorn. And then... it was just, I thought the whistle certainly got put away in the last minute and a half. Probably opposite to the Pies
Saturday
Crows
afternoon,
game, where the umpires decided to use the whistle in the last few minutes. Anyway, it was probably something that Hawks fan won't be happy about. But Darcy Byrne-Jones, that goal he kicked, and Willie Rioli as well. It was him, wasn't it? He kicked that second last goal. And I love the way he did it quickly, and it sort of seemed he was very cool about it, wasn't he, Willie Rioli, when he kicked that goal? He didn't really put too much effort into it. He just did it because there wasn't a lot of time left on the clock. He didn't have much time to think about it. But what I loved the most probably is just Ken Hinkley. How good
he does love a good
celebration.
celebration on the sideline. He's known for that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, it would have meant a lot. I think a lot of people would begin writing Port off if they lost that game in the manner that they did. And yeah, I love it. I love seeing a bit of emotion from the coaches in a positive light, not a negative light. I feel for Sam Mitchell. They were showing the vision of him after the game and just head in hands. I really feel for him. He really, really deserved to win that match. I think Ken stole that from him. But no doubt it was an unreal game.
Well, the vision of Sam Mitchell was also quite just interesting and, obviously devastating for him. And I was talking to a Hawks supporter. I'm like, mate, there's nothing to stress about. Like, you lost, but you guys have already won heaps of games this season. And they've only won 3, but their form over the last few weeks has been very good. They've obviously been winning the last couple of weeks. I think, what was it? They beat Saints, then they beat Bulldogs the week before. So they won 3 of the last 4 games heading into this. It could have been 4 of the last 5. And it is a bit disappointing for Hawks because they're actually in contention for finals if they won that. That sounds a bit ridiculous to say because they're such a young list, but they could have been 4 and 6, and they're 4 and 6 alongside some other good teams around that 12th position on the ladder, but now they're still in 15th. So tough pill for them to swallow. It's a loss that they've actually, it's not just about development and rebuilding for them now. It's almost sort of like West Coast. It's like, all right, when are they going to make the top 8 now?
Yeah, I mean, they've both sort of clicked at the same time. I think West Coast probably clicked slightly earlier in the season, and Hawthorn had that maiden win for the season against North Melbourne, and we sort of thought, okay, they're not in the pack. North Melbourne and almost Richmond now sort of in the same boat. Richmond obviously have for different reasons with all the injuries they have, and to a certain extent their personnel. But yeah, it's exciting that they've probably fast-tracked them. Hawthorn, we probably thought we'd get a little bit more out of in 2024. This is sort of the Hawthorn that we expected. Personally, West Coast have probably exceeded my expectations. They've sort of clicked, and obviously there are several key figures like Waterman's been massive. We'll probably talk about that later on, coming back from injury. Kicked 5 yesterday, and Harley Reid, Ruben Jinby, I actually thought played a really good game yesterday for West Coast as well. There's plenty of players that are sort of playing their part, so it's good to see a couple of clubs on the rise, and naturally there are a couple that are on the fall, but that's just the rebuild system. That's just the cycle of life in the AFL.
Yeah, well, let's get into that West Coast game, but just before we do, I should give listeners a bit of an update on Charlie Gill. He's not here, obviously. What's he doing? I don't even know his excuse for not being on the show this week, but he says that he's got a busy week, so he can't be on. But I'm sure we'll get him back on soon. Anyway, maybe it's because Carlton got smashed by 50 points.
Oh, you reckon? You reckon that might be why?
I reckon that might be part of the reason, to be honest. How many have Carlton lost now? They've lost 1, 2, 3 in a row. 4 in a row they've lost Carlton. Yeah. That tells you everything.
Tough matchups, admittedly. They haven't been easy games that they've played.
Yeah.
Was that 4th most recent one the Crows game?
Well, sorry?
I'm trying to think who they lost to. They lost to a few good opponents.
Yeah, Collingwood. So they lost to Geelong first, then Collingwood, and then it was Melbourne. And then this week, obviously, they lost to Sydney.
Yeah, okay. And then they would have had a win. Yeah, the Crows game before that's probably one that they would have wanted to win. But I think the last 4 opponents have all been of pretty good calibre. So, yeah, I think you can probably take them out of premiership contention for now. I think for them, I say that more in the sense that it's probably now week by week. I think we all just sort of just wanted to high road them to the top 4, and they could well finish there. But I think it's gone from sort of looking at the bigger picture to sort of just taking it week by week to make sure that they do make finals, because I think they're sitting around 9th or 10th on the ladder at the moment. Yeah, there you go. So
they could miss finals, Carlton.
You got to get back in the 8 before you start thinking the bigger picture. But like a lot of clubs, it's week by week.
Yeah, it is, and like there's teams like Fremantle are looking good, but yeah, Carlton, the disappointing thing about them is they were dominating at the start of that game. I was spewing. I was like, my tip, here we go, another week of bad tipping for me. And then Sydney ended up winning. But, Carlton were down by about 30 points in that game. So very disappointing for them. But let's talk about Harley Reid. He's a star. Like, he fended off Clayton Oliver. Then he fended off Petrarca from a centre bounce. Remarkable. And the question for him now is, well, not for him, but, people are talking about, and Mark Robertson said, Harley Reid is the best first-year player we've seen in the modern era. Better than Gary Ablett Jr., Carey, Buddy. Better than any of them. What do you reckon, Fawkes?
I'm going to sit on the fence and say it's too early to say. Yeah. I think his ceiling is probably as high as we've seen from anyone. And I'm certainly not critical of it. I just think the level of the claim that we're saying to say he's the best first-year player we've ever seen, it's just consistency. He had by his lofty standards, as we know, probably had a little bit of a quiet start to the season. Then gather round out at Mount Barker against Sydney, he really picked up. I think that was round 4, and has been pretty consistent since then. Yeah. I think consistency is the thing that I'll be watching for the rest of the season, and that's certainly not a criticism of him at all. I think he's an absolute star, which you don't say a lot about people. You often use the terms like young gun and future star, but he is a star in his first year, which is pretty impressive in itself. But I think just consistency. Obviously, last night was another really good game. Maybe it comes with more midfield time. Maybe it comes with the Eagles being better. He performs. I think they probably lift each other up as the season goes. They both help each other, obviously. So, yeah, I'm hesitant to put that label on it yet, but I can definitely see if he plays like he did last night and as he has done in other games so far this season, to see out 2024, I think there's definitely merit to that argument. What do you think?
Yeah. I think he's I'm with you there on the best first year player. Let's see the whole year first before we decide that. But certainly he could be. There's no doubt about it. And that conversation deserves to be had and debated a little bit now. But that goal he kicked out of the middle was remarkable. Like, he ran about 60 metres. Yeah. Banged it in. And what I find remarkable about Harley is his physical attributes in his first season of AFL is crazy. Like, he looks like a fourth-year player with his body, and he's just a freak. He could be a really good player, and like Nick Dacos is great. He's very good, but in terms of potential, potential is very airy-fairy. Like, it's easy for anyone to say he could be the best ever AFL player potentially, but like, he could be the way the ceiling he's sort of setting himself just from the first few games he's played in his AFL career. And that goal was like, wow, that's incredible. If you just watch that 20-second clip, you're thinking he's an absolute superstar. So he could be a freak, and yeah, he's certainly lifted the Eagles. But yeah, it's just remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, no, he's a gun. I think, just touching on what you said, his physical attributes you don't normally see until you get a third or fourth year, become a third or fourth year player. And I think that's definitely helped fast track his ability to sort of have such a big impact on the competition. We've seen guys like Dacos, Sheasel, even Nick Martin to a certain extent. They've all been really, really good in their outside game in the first couple of years. And we've seen Sheasel move into the midfield for North Melbourne. Dacos has been a lot more consistent in the midfield, I think, with his contested ball. Their attributes that have grown over 2 or 3 years, whereas with Harley, it's sort of just been from, I think from about round 4 this year, it's just been bang, which you don't get from those types like Dacos, Sheasel. You didn't see that in their first year. And partially that's because Caleb Sarong, partially because of the role they were playing. Like, they're playing a lot more outside ball. Yeah. But yeah, Harley's been magnificent, and you don't see guys like that do that until their 4th or 5th year.
Yeah, even Horn Francis, like, he's another one.
Took him a year to develop. Like, that's just how it goes.
Caleb Sarong, he like, a lot of them start their career at half forward or something, high half forward. But Harley Reid, and I think, he's getting favours because he's playing for West Coast, who at the start of the year we're a young team. They still are young, and there's a lot of opportunity. So you can throw a guy like Harley Reid straight into the midfield. But he's just stronger than any other player that's come into the AFL from the get-go. And I don't know what it is. Like, someone needs to go look at what he's been doing in his draft year last year, and what he was doing in the gym, or just whatever he was doing, because he's certainly ready to go physically.
He took his recovery very, very seriously. He was very strict, and I'm sure a lot of players are probably like that coming through It's probably never better than what it has been before, but I know Harley in particular definitely took his recovery really seriously, and days off weren't really days off. They were looking after himself and still making his body was in peak condition. So I guess he's reaping the rewards of that now.
Yeah, and the kid from Echuca, he's good to watch. What about Melbourne though? Losing to Eagles, it's disappointing for Melbourne. And I thought Melbourne would put up a good effort, especially at Perth Stadium. They won a flag there a few years ago, but they were nowhere near what people thought they would be in this game.
I can't quite claim it because I didn't tip West Coast, but I did flag this with a really good mate of mine that it would be a danger game. Which is a term that's very easily thrown around, which is good. Sort of a nice little fallback if you don't get your tip right. But yeah, I don't know. It was just Melbourne. There's a few clubs. Sydney's really the only one to just divert quickly that I think have now, obviously with the exception of their loss to Richmond. But
that's right. That loss to Richmond is a real asterisk on them, but anyway.
Everyone sort of has, that's a good way to put it, everyone has an asterisk over them this season, but I think Sydney's now probably the only club in the comp that doesn't have multiple next to their name.
Yeah, yep.
And Melbourne's had a few now, as have Geelong, as we've seen, Carlton, as you said.
Giants.
Even Essendon, everyone has them. And yeah, this is just another one to put down to Melbourne, and it just makes the premiership race so much harder to, I think, argue in favour of anyone else but Sydney. And it's still way too early in the season to call who's going to win the premiership, in my opinion. But Sydney's definitely the front runner as a result. They haven't slipped up. Melbourne, it was a danger game. It's a win they probably wanted to win by a fair margin, I'd say. But maybe we're not giving enough credit to West Coast. Maybe West Coast, I didn't catch all of the game, but maybe they perhaps outplayed them significantly better than what we might give them credit for. So it's definitely a tick for West Coast. Moving up, it's great to see the big crowds getting there even when their team's not going so well. And Melbourne are, they're back in the middle of the pack, I guess.
Yeah. And I like the way you ran through all the teams there. And like Sydney, like for Luke Parker can't even get back into the team.
I have a big gripe with that. I think he's been very hard done by to not be in the team. Yeah, personally.
Well, he after that bump, he might be out for a few more weeks. Completely.
Yeah, I think they'll come out with that today. I think the findings of that bump. Yeah, I believe.
Did you catch? Did you see that bump? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to the naked eye, I didn't think he actually hit him. Obviously, he hit him high. Obviously, he's got a broken cheekbone. I think Joel Smith requires surgery from what I've seen. But which is never good. But
that doesn't help.
No, it doesn't help his case. But to the naked eye, I didn't think he caught him high. But again, the camera angle that I saw was quite far away from the play. It was on the opposite side. So he'll definitely get 3 or 4 weeks for it. It's probably the right thing. Given what the precedent we've seen throughout the season, it's really unfortunate. I think he's been really unlucky to not be playing AFL, particularly this week. But you never know. It might be a structural thing. Sydney's midfield's going just fine as it is. And maybe there wasn't room for him on a half-forward flank or a wing. And as a result, he's just got to bide his time until there's an injury or a severe lapse in performance. How did you see it?
Well, it just tells me how good Sydney's sort of depth is, and I think they deserve to be the premiership favourites at the moment. And I think Mills, he's not back yet.
No, he'll be after the bye. He's had a bit of a hiccup. Yeah. I think he injured his calf running, which is on top of his shoulder injury from the off-season. So he's not back for a little while.
See, but they get him back. I think they're in a really good spot, Sydney, and they've been so close to it the last few seasons. It's just missing out on grand finals and stuff like that. Losing to Collingwood, beating. Hang on, did they? Yeah, they beat Collingwood by a point in the prelim a few years ago.
Yeah,
and
2022.
Got thrashed in the granny.
Yeah,
but they've been thereabouts, and with these players out, and I think so much of the premiership race comes down to, and premiership credentials comes down to your team and how many players you got fit. You saw Collingwood last year, Dacos was out, they lost, they had to win the semi and prelim and so forth. But when you got your stars in, then it just makes your team so much better. So Sydney, it's good that they're having the injuries now. By the time it comes to August, September, that's when you want your full team out there. So that's the great unknown with all this is who's going to have the fittest team. And we're seeing Carlton right now. That's why they've probably lost. I think that they've lost 4 in a row. They won the first 6 and they've lost 4 in a row. And a lot of that comes down to injuries. So we'll see how it all pans out. Now, Fawkes, the Pies, it was an interesting game. I actually didn't catch this one. I was out commentating in the VAFA, Old Brighton taking on Old Scotch. Old Scotch got pumped. Anyway, that's a different competition. We'll stick to the national stuff. And what did you make of Isaac Rankine? Let's deep dive into it. He ran too far, the umpire said. What did you make of it?
I'm a Crows fan, just to preface this. I think that's why Max has asked this. Rankine, the umpiring decision, I had absolutely no issue with that whatsoever. The umpiring decision in isolated, had no issue with it. He obviously ran way too far. I think Fox Footy ran up the numbers and it was 24.2 metres or something along those lines. Should have been a free kick. Had no issue with it. My issue with it comes with not the umpire. I can't speak for his. Maybe he has a track record of calling people for too far. Like I really can't speak to it without having a proper look at the numbers. But I thought it was interesting if you look at it as a whole competition, that gets missed. I don't know. I'm going to say 91, 92 times out of 100. Like I reckon it's above 90%. I'd be more than happy to be proven wrong. So I found it quite interesting that was called in the dying seconds of a game when it doesn't get called 9 out of 10 times. And traditionally, umpires have been, as we saw yesterday with the Hawks game, put the whistle away in the last few minutes.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that was called. I'm certainly not saying that it cost the Crows the game. I think it may as well cost them an opportunity to try and win the game because it was an inside 50. Like there's no saying that, there's no way of knowing that Colin wouldn't have just pumped the ball back out and it would have been game over. So certainly didn't cost the Crows the game. It certainly wasn't the wrong decision. But as a league, if you're going to pick it up in the dying minutes of a game like that, when it doesn't get called 90% of the time, you've got to flip it the other way. I'd so much rather you just call that every single time you see it, or just don't call it at all.
Yeah.
So I don't have
or change the rule.
Or change the rule. I don't have an issue with the incident whatsoever. This is, I think, more a reflection of how the game can be better umpired, and perhaps the hindsight or the foresight of saying, okay, this doesn't normally get picked up. We're going to pick it up when the game's on the line in the last 30 seconds. So that was just my 2 cents. But it was a free kick. So
you say that you're fine with the decision?
In isolation.
But in isolation.
Yeah.
In hindsight with the benefit of replays, etc.
By the rule, that's a free kick.
By the rule, it's a free kick, yeah. But like everyone's reaction, even Collingwood supporters would have been sitting there going like, oh, well, how lucky are we? Like,
well, what did you... I mean, look, we're in the rare instance that the two fans of the game are speaking about it. Like, what did you think of it?
Oh, look, I follow Collingwood, but I thought that was a shocking... My issue with it all is this 15 metres of running, you have to take a bounce, is just so... Brad Scott summed it up perfectly. He said it was a party pooper. Like... It's a stupid rule. It should be 20 metres. I've been harping on about this for years. Why is it only 15? We love to see players running and dashing and running out of stoppages like Harley Reid did. We love that. It's a big highlight in the game. But players have to take a bounce after 15 metres. And it makes it hard for the players to be able to run away from stoppages because you have to bounce it. You're at risk of getting caught. Let's extend it to 20 metres. And I was so disappointed, even though I'm a Collingwood fan, that this got paid. It's just, I just don't like it. I just think it's so just against the game and just. Yeah, and you're right. You're spot on, Forks, about the umpires just picking and choosing when they pay it. Like they never pay these. It only gets paid if it's 20 metres, pretty much. That's most of the time the ones that actually get paid. They let so many go where players have run 16, 17 metres.
Yeah, perhaps. But I mean, like, I try and look at it as a glass half full, as if maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. Maybe others are looking at it the wrong way. Is the umpire's actually the only one who has gone by the letter of the law and applied it correctly? Maybe this is more an issue. Issue's a strong word. Maybe this is more of a reflection of how it's been umpired traditionally. And for whatever reason, this umpire decided to adjudicate it differently to his colleagues in the instance of the match, which is fine, as I said, because it was the right call. But maybe it's just the umpire. If they're going to have this rule, it needs to be applied correctly. And I think my only issue, as I said before, is it hasn't been applied correctly before. This, in the dying seconds of a game, gets caught. I mean, there was footage of later in the night. I think Harry Sharp was running for Brisbane against Richmond, and he ran 22.8. It was 22 metres and something, and didn't get called for
There
it.
you go.
And obviously Rankine's run a little bit further than that, but it sort of shows as to how ambiguous the rule has been interpreted by umpires. And there's no right or no wrong when it's so ambiguous. There's an argument for each and all. So, I think it's probably a reflection of perhaps there needs to be a rule change, or it just has to be more strictly applied.
Yeah, I think it's got rule change written all over it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they got to extend it to 20 metres. It's exciting to see players run, and umpires aren't even paying them anyway most of the time when they've run more than 15 metres. And then the one time it happens, it's all of a sudden deemed as like a wrong decision. But that umpire actually did the right thing by the letter of the law. Yeah.
That's why I say in isolation it's really important to say that was the right decision. But as a whole, the league hasn't been paying it as often as perhaps the rule would suggest it should be.
And you can't be applying some rules, and not applying others. You got a rule book there. Stick to the rule book. There's no traditionally, they've been umpiring it like this, even though that's the case. But there's a rule book. You got to follow the rules. And in the review, are they gonna look at it and be like, so from now on, are the umpires going to be like, guys, we've been doing it so wrong now. So every time a player runs 16 metres now, they're going to be very strict on it. Yeah, that's the rule, and that's what this could cause that now to happen.
Perhaps
we could be seeing players getting caught for running too far, but the umpire department, they need to just be mature about it and say, traditionally we've been letting players run up to 20 metres where we haven't been calling them. Let's stick to that. Let's not change our way of going about it and start pinning players when they've run more than 15 metres, because we haven't done that. Even though the rules say that you're supposed to pin them after they've run more than 15 metres. It's all just a bit of a mess. They need to make that rule change, in my view. But when do you make it? You can't make it mid-season. It's just you don't make rule changes mid-season. Yeah. Even though the game always makes changes mid-season. We've seen the goal reviews change this season, the way they do them. And a few other things, they tighten up on prior opportunity, or they tighten up on this and that. So there are rule changes that happen. So maybe it's just, maybe they go through all of that and sort it out. It's interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. That one certainly caused a bit of debate over the weekend. Bombers are in second. They've won. They're undefeated now for 7 games straight. They've won. Oh no, I think it's 6.
I reckon.
Six games straight. They're undefeated. They've won 5 of their last 6. The other game was a draw. They're looking good, aren't they, the Bombers? Yeah. It's interesting because when they just scraped over the line against the Eagles, it's like, the Bombers. Like, I was worried. I was like, how could you scrape over the line against Eagles? But now we've seen the Eagles play really good footy. So they're actually not a bottom 3 side, which everyone sort of thought. They're actually a decent team, Eagles. So that win over the Eagles by less than 10 points now doesn't look as bad. And the Bombers, they've won, 5 of their last 6. They're really looking good, aren't they, Fawkes?
Yeah, they're looking good. My housemate's an Essendon supporter. He's a diehard Essendon supporter. And I've just fully embraced how they've gone about it the last month and a half, sort of through him and watching it. Like, they're playing good football. I think less and less question marks are getting put over their head. I certainly was very sceptical of them on the start of their winning streak. I didn't quite buy into it, but I think there is a track record of really good teams sometimes just scraping over the line, like they did against West Coast a few weeks ago, and then also instances where it's a bit of a tussle the first half and then they do get the game on their own terms and blow away with it. So, I was very happy for the Bombers. Again, getting it yesterday. It's not always easy playing against the bottom teams, as funny as that might sound, but they're going to play finals. I'm sure they haven't said the F word down at Tullamarine a whole lot yet, but they will be playing finals. They've got a good draw leading into their bye and maybe perhaps just after it. And then I think we'll find out a lot more about them in the back half. They'll get some tune-ups before September, and I guess we'll see where they're at. But perhaps the streak of winless finals is finally coming to an end, Max. What do you think?
20 years. I think they'll get their first finals win in 20 years, I think it's been. Mm-hmm. So They're looking good at the Bombers. They've got a good midfield group. They've got Peter Wright up forward. He kicked 4 goals yesterday. He kicked 2 in that third term where they dominated. And they're looking good. Who else? I think another player had a good game.
Mac Welfie's been awesome for them the last
his
couple of
100th
weeks.
game, he killed it yesterday.
It's been very, very good. Harrison Jones, he doesn't get a whole lot of touches, but I think he's become quite an important part in that tall forward line, having 3 genuine key forwards. Langford's been awesome. Before yesterday, he had kicked 16 goals in 5 games.
Yeah.
They're flying. And as Brad Scott said yesterday in the press conference, they've sort of spread the load in the midfield. Parrish was laid out yesterday and they still managed to, in the end, get it done, albeit they got beaten quite comfortably in the clearances. But even if they're getting beaten in the middle, for them to have won the way they did, it means that around the ground they were still having impact, whether it be in open play or seeing their teammates up with effective kicks inside forward 50. So they're finding a way to win when even stats that would normally suggest victory don't go their way. So, again, I think that's a sign of a good team. And as I said, less and less question marks hanging over their head for mine.
Yeah, and that third quarter, they had, I think, plus 25 contested possessions. So it was so disappointing for North, though, because they were down by 7 points at half time, and then 3/4 time, they're down by 45. And then, as usual, for the Roos, who showed a lot of good signs yesterday, but as usual, they when the game's dead, they perform, and they kicked a few goals. They won the last quarter. But I see that too often with the Roos. I've been to a few of their games this season. And they show a lot of good signs. That first half, as I said, they were in the game. They were almost the better side, probably. They could, it was very even. But for them to just drop off like that in the third term is disappointing. I know they've got a very young team, but the marks inside 50s is what's killing them. They're giving away too many marks inside 50. And Callum Coleman-Jones, he did his Achilles a few weeks ago. That really hurt him because he's a big tool of theirs. And they've Luke Davies-Uniacke, really good game from him. There's a lot of good signs, but you can't drop off like that. And even though they're young, don't use that as an excuse. They were in that game, and it's not really a case of fitness. That they proved in the last quarter that they can then run out the game, but they just allowed the Bombers to dominate in that third term. Contested possessions, they got pumped, and I'm probably being a bit harsh here, but they got to win a game, and the players, you can't allow that to happen. You can't allow a game to slip like that, in my view. Mm-hmm. Am I being a bit harsh here? What do you think?
I think a little bit, but I don't think you're too far off the mark. I mean, I think that youth does play a little bit of a part in how they're playing, and again, if we're looking at a glass half full mentality, I like the fact that they're able to string 2 successful quarters together. It was really the third term, as you said, was the only quarter that really, probably prevented their chances of a real upset win. So I sort of see that as a positive because we haven't seen that from them in previous weeks. Previous weeks, they haven't put any quarters together. They've been smashing all 4 quarters. So there's definitely some positives to take out of it. I like the fact they're able to string together the first half, but I think just some key matchups probably just went against them. They were winning the clearances. It's keeping it inside your forward 50 from then is probably what hurt them. And then obviously, as we know, they've got a very inexperienced, undersized back line. Dawson, I thought, actually played okay on debut for him, but it's really hard, as I said, when you're matching up against Peter Wright, Harrison Jones and Kyle Langford as well, with a Mac Welfie running right. I think most teams would struggle to keep the ball out of their hands in the forward 50 when they're playing like the way they did yesterday.
Yeah, and I like Paul Curtis up forward for the Roos.
He often pops up with a goal a game.
Yeah.
Funny I say that. I don't think he actually kicked one yesterday. I think he may have kicked 2 behinds. But, yeah, he's been good. He's probably flown slightly under the radar. He'll pop up at times. And it's always, it's hard as a key forward in a team that's not going well. It's even harder as a small forward in a team that's not going well. So he's picking up the crumbs when they're there for the most part. And he's probably a rare shining light for them in their attacking half so far this year.
Yeah. Well, what else have we got? The Dogs, I didn't watch this game, but they beat GWS over there at their ground. Good win for the Bulldogs. And 2 weeks ago, when they were under the pump, everyone was calling for beverage to go. Not beverages, beverage to go. Well, if you said they'd win their next 2 games at that point, people would have laughed at you. So they smashed Richmond by more than 90 points, and they beat Giants. They beat them, and Falk's like, what do you make of the Bulldogs?
I'm very happy for them. I think there was a lot of rightful speculation, I think, at Whitten Oval, not specifically about Beveridge, but just where the club was at, because I've been a big believer that while they haven't finished top 4 under Luke Beveridge's reign, I believe that's a fact. They've got a very good list that probably should be pushing for the top 4 most years. It was obviously very disappointing seeing them not make finals last year. A loss to West Coast in round 23 killed that for them, and then looking ahead, it looks pretty grim. But I really love some of the inclusions they've brought into the team. Like I think Caleb Daniel has been stiff to not be playing more than what he has. But as I said before with the Swans, there's clearly, I assume, structural reasons as to why he hasn't been playing. Yeah. Bailey Dale's been magnificent since he's been in the side full time, coming off half back. Johannesson was pretty good up until he did his hamstring. I think he was out, on the weekend, just gone, didn't play. So I think they've been really good. There's still a lot to play out, like a lot of teams this season, but I'm hopeful they'll make the finals. They've had a couple of key ins that have been really, really good. Ed Rich has been awesome as well, playing a little bit more midfield time. They're finding players in new positions when they've had to make structural changes. Their forward line seems to have a little bit more synergy than what it had at the start of the season. Again, like we speak about playing tools in their forward line. They've got Hugo Hagan, Sam Darcy has been playing really, really well since he's come into the team, as well as Aaron Norton, who there were question marks as to whether or not he'd be thrown down back because of the tall forward situation. Yeah. They're keeping Rory Lobb, who's been taking the absolute mickey in the VFL this season. He can't even get a game, mainly due to structure, but also just recently on the back of the performances up forward. So I'm really happy for him. They don't have Cody Waitman. He's been missing the last couple of weeks with an elbow injury. Riley Garcia has really stepped up as a high half forward. His pressure and, attack around the forward 50 has been really good. So they're plugging holes, and there's guys to come back from injury that will help them push further for hopefully what for Bulldogs fans is a top eight team in September. Do you see them playing finals football, Max?
Yeah, I think what I like about Caleb Daniel and Bailey Dale missing is then it creates an opportunity for other players. Now they're back in the side. So there's real competition for spots, and that creates a lot of depth, which I think holds you in really good stead for later on in the season. When you got depth and a player goes down, you got someone to come in, which I think will come in handy for the Bulldogs. And look, from their win over the Giants, where they had way more scoring shots as well. What was it? It was 30 scoring shots to just 13. So 30 to 13 is a big difference.
So what was it? 12 goals, 17.
It was 8-22-70.
8-22. Wow. Sorry, I missed that.
To 6-7-43. So they thrashed them. So they're 11th right now, the Dogs. So we'll see what happens. They're 5-5. They got the Swans this week.
We talk about asterisks over teams. The Bulldogs certainly had their fair few at the start of the season, but GWS is another one that you can sort of throw in. We thought they were up over the hill as one of the top few premiership contenders, and now, just like Melbourne, they're sort of back in the middle of the pack. It's really just Sydney at the top. So, it's a big scout for the Dogs. That's not an easy game, going to Blacktown and winning that. So, good for them.
And look at Collingwood. All of a sudden, they're 5th.
Goes flag. So they're 5th. Last week, they were 8th. We saw how they were 0-3 to start the season. It was so hard for them. Like, it took them 6 rounds from round 3 to get into the 8, and they didn't lose a game. So for the Dog, it's really, really hard once you're out of the 8 to make it back in. But the Dogs, they're going a long way the last couple of weeks to getting back in. I know, as you said, they're only 11th, but they're doing everything they can. Yeah. And it just shows how tight the race is. I mean, without going too early on Sydney, between second and... You could probably throw it to 12th or 13th. You're probably cutting it at 12th. It's all really close. So,
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 10th to 3 is separated by 1 win. So
yeah, there you go. It's good. It's good for the competition, and Another tick for the board.
What a season! What a season! It's panning out to be here.
It's good. There's only a couple of outliers really in Richmond and North Melbourne. I wouldn't say Sydney's an outlier. It's just those two teams now that are sort of just straggling away at the bottom, which is unfortunate. But
what about Saints? Are you going to throw Saints in that? I'll tell you what, the Saints, they're having a bit of a misery.
Yeah, I actually did a fairly big piece on them for work during the last week now, and they've got a lot of money to throw around, as I think a lot of people have seen.
I read that piece, yep.
And it's going to be really important in the trade period. I think as of right now, at time of recording, they've got 21 players out of contract, which is a lot. That's nearly half their list. The reason for that, I think, personally, is they're probably a little bit unsure as to where they sit in the Premiership road. I think they're looking both ways, and they need a hitchhiker to take them to the top end. I think they need a couple of big recruits to help them get to where they probably should be.
And they need midfielders, don't they?
They need midfielders. LDU's obviously been the big one out of contract. He's out of contract at the end of next year, but Saints believe they can get him. They're throwing a lot of money at him, between 1.3 and 1.5. We saw them throw an unofficial offer at Jacob Wiedering for 1.5. I personally don't think they need Wiedering for that much money. I think they've got an All-Australian fullback in Callum Wilkie who has been really serviceable for them in the time he's been there. And Hugh McCluggage, he's a third big restricted free agent that's on the market. I don't think he'll go to the Saints. I actually don't think he'll leave Brisbane. I think he's probably just waiting for the right time to sign at Brisbane. Just see how things play out the next few weeks. It's obviously, they had a really big win against Richmond, but it's important to see where they're at the end of this season and potentially drive up his value by not signing and playing well. He's had a really good season and just waiting for the end of the season to push up that price a little bit more perhaps. So in terms of St Kilda, they're sort of stuck in the middle of the Premiership road, probably towards the back end now, the way they've played the last few weeks, but I think a couple of big recruits will certainly help them. I think I flagged as well. It's probably left field opinion. I don't think a whole lot of people would agree with me, but I think someone like Matt Taberner, who's currently out of contract at the Dockers, he can't get a game with the young tall forwards they're playing there, which is completely fine.
Matt Taberner's not getting a game at the Dockers.
No, he's fit now. He's not getting a game. He's behind Josh Tracy, who's been awesome for the Dockers.
He's their leading goal kicker this season.
He's been very, very good. Jai Miss, who obviously there's a lot of promise around him. And then when Sean Darcy's in the team, Luke Jackson's obviously playing up forwards. That's a third tall that they're playing.
That's going to happen this week. Yep.
Yeah, there's not room, unfortunately, for Taberner. And I think if you're able to recruit him and he can get on the park, I think for Saints fans, it gives Max King a little bit less pressure on his shoulders and it lets him develop. He's probably developed slightly slower than what fans would have expected or hoped for, rightly or wrongly.
I think he's been hard done by Max King. He's had 2 shoulder recos, and I read this in your story, 2 shoulder recos in the last 12 months. So, it takes time. And the service that he is getting is poor.
100%.
But Max King needs to be better as well. But he's been injured the last, coming into this season. He's, been in and out. So let's give him 2 more weeks. But yeah, he needs to lift. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
That's not meant to be a spite on Max at all.
No, it's not. And I'm not having a go at you, Forks. This is having a go at some journos out there. Mark Robinson wrote a piece. Just, he's the poster boy of St Kilda's woes. Like that's over the top.
Yeah, that's definitely harsh.
It's their midfield, and Ross Lyon said it. The midfield needs to step up, and they do, because I covered that game against Freo. St Kilda got pumped in the midfield. They had a good first half, and their second half, they just got beaten up in the midfield, and they lost field position big time. And it was as simple as that. They got beaten in the midfield. So,
yep.
People like to have a go at Max King, but yeah. But I think Matt Taberner, though, would be a really good pickup.
I think he'd give them just a little bit. I mean, he's probably not demanding top dollar at the moment, but he gives Max King a little bit of support up forward. Jack Hayes, he was omitted on the weekend. I think he's someone that they should probably pursue with. I know he's 28 years old, but I think Hayes is a very good player. I'd probably have him in the team as a second forward, because the current structure they have, and they're clearly missing Higgins through his suspension, and
Membry.
And Membry as well. Yeah,
managed. He got managed. Yeah,
It just makes it hard for King to do all the work, and he had a very good defender on him in the weekend in Alex Pearce, which makes it even harder. But I just think an extra tall forward who's had a little bit of experience and has proven that he can play well with the likes of Matt Taberner would be good for the Saints. So it's a big off season for them. I think everyone, including myself, is pretty disappointed with their outfit. So their output so far this season, but it's too early in the season to completely rule them out. I don't think they'll make finals personally, but it's a long season.
Yeah, and they do have a good tall player. He goes by the name of let me just get it up here. And they took mark of the round contenders this week. And it was Mitch Owens. He kicked 3 first half goals, which was great.
Yeah, Macheta was good.
But Anthony Caminiti, he was very good. Yeah, he had the first 3 scoring shots of the second half, took a screamer of a mark. Then in the next 3, 4, 5 minutes, he kicked 2 goals for him, and they were on fire, the Saints. But then Freo just dominated, and Freo had way more scoring shots, more than double. It was, what was it? I think it was
8 goals, 17 in the end they kicked.
Yeah, the scoring shots was 9-18, 72 to 8-7, 55. So
yeah, I think Caminiti's he's serviceable. I think like a lot of players, not just St Kilda but across the competition, I guess you're always looking for consistency. He's got a chance now. He kicked 3 goals 5 the week before for Sandringham in the VFL, came into the team, had an impact in the second half, as you said. When he's at his best, he's certainly a good asset for their side. But, part of it's their efforts in the forward line and hitting the scoreboard, and part of it is, I guess, the delivery in their forward line as well from the midfield.
Yeah. We'll get into our tipping now. The Morts Meats Tipster of the Round. Thanks to Morts Meats for sponsoring this prize. But let's see who won this week, and guess who it is? It's my father.
Oh, really? What did you get? 8?
He got 8.
Wow.
He was, and the only game he got wrong was, and he was following along very intently yesterday because he was 8 out of 8 there. West Coast got the job done over Melbourne. But yeah, he was the only one to tip 8. So Nick, my father, well done. You're the Morts Meats Tipster of the Round, $10 prize. I'll have to pay him up.
Yeah, very good, very good. So 8 out of 9 on the weekends, pretty. I dare say most people would have got 6 or 7.
Well, guess what I got?
8's very good.
I'm a misery. I got 4.
Really? What one did you tip against?
But see, I put my tips in on about Tuesday, and I don't go back and change them at all. And like I thought Freo would win. They won. I had Saints from my Tuesday tip. So I'm just all over the shop.
Yeah, got to sort that one out, Max.
Yeah, I do. Anyway, we like to give a shout out to the person that is leading the tipping competition, and that is Sausage Jordan S. You are on 64, coming first, ahead of Garage Maid and Paynesville, who are on 63. So it's tight up there at the top, and well done there to everyone that's tipping well. Thanks for jumping on board there with the tipping.
What about the people that aren't tipping well, Max? What about us?
Yeah. Well, let's scroll down.
Mate, I'm having an absolute howler. This is the first time I've tipped in 3 or 4 years, and I completely remember now why I stopped tipping is because I just cannot do one save in my life.
You're 38. You're on 38 and you're 78th out of 82.
I don't think that's me.
Will Fazzle.
Nah, that's
that's not you.
Me. That's
Sorry.
someone else.
Sorry.
An imposter, Max.
Sorry, that is not you. Where are you? Are you in the head of the footy tipping club? Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. I was gonna say you're not. You wouldn't be that bad.
I'm bad. I'm not.
Yeah.
Sorry to the other left bloke out there, but that's not me.
You're on 53 and I'm on 52.
Yeah. Okay. We're both having pretty bad.
So we're both going head to head there. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Very good.
Yeah. Anyway, mate, we'll move on. It's a tough topic to talk about. Anyway, to claim the Morts Meats Tipster of the Week prize, which my dad will have to listen to right now, you got a message to head over to the Footy page on Instagram. So good luck with that. My old man, we'll test out his social media skills on Instagram.
Yeah, see if he's listening as well.
Yeah. He'll be listening.
Yeah, very good. He's a loyal listener. We like that.
There's a few loyal listeners out there. Sam Larrett is another one. Shout out to you. And there's plenty of others as well who, but there's also a lot of loyal listeners that I don't know about. So
yeah, that's always good.
It's good to have you on board. Thanks. Shout out to the loyal listeners. We really do appreciate your work. So thanks for tuning in. All right, where else are we at? That's probably a wrap up for the show, folks. I will mention the Suns. They beat the Cats. Great win on Thursday night. And that one we will mention. But the other thing I want to mention quickly there is I want Suns to play more home games in Darwin. They've won, I think, 5 straight. 6 straight now in the Territory at TIO Stadium. I was there for their last 2 games last season, which they won. Love their work in the Gold Coast, and I'd rename the Suns to Gold Coast Crocs.
The Crocs.
I'd call them the Crocs. They'd play 1 game in Cairns, 1 game in Broome. These are quite...
In WA.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then I'd split the rest of their home games between TIO Stadium and People First Stadium, because Gold Coast, they've been there for however long, and they've tried to generate a lot of interest, and it's been below par, probably below what projections were at. I want to see the Suns be called the Gold Coast Crocs, because they get good support in Darwin. People love footy in Darwin. In Gold Coast, people don't love footy as much. My view is call them the Gold Coast Crocs as an initial sort of name change. Then a few years down the track, you might end up calling them the Northern Crocs. But for a standalone team to be in Darwin, a 20th licence, it's too much of a stretch, because it costs a lot of money and it's hard travel. The flights there are shocking. It's costly. It's a costly exercise, and the population there is quite low for probably a big AFL team. But I think let's make this change with Gold Coast. Call them the Crocs. See how that goes for a few years. This could be permanent, and then you might end up renaming them the Northern Crocs. Broome and Cairns might not work, so you might just call them the Darwin, Buffaloes. It might be a standalone Darwin team.
You got Crocs, you got Buffaloes, you got Suns. Yeah, wow.
Oh, mate, I'm a bit worried here. You're probably thinking, what am I talking about?
I'll give you my simple take. I think they should. I like the idea of them having an arrangement like they did. They do with Hawthorn and North Melbourne, how they play down in Tasmania. That current situation where they play 4 or 5 games. I'd like to see the Gold Coast do that. Maybe 3, 4 games in the NT, and I think they normally do 1 game a year at Kazali Stadium in Cairns.
That's Melbourne.
Melbourne do a game up there?
That game.
Okay, sorry, apologies. I'd like to see Gold Coast still play a game up there. So if they get 12 home games a year, you give him 3 in Darwin and 1 in Cairns, or you just give him 4 in Darwin and then you just leave Melbourne to play in Kazali Stadium up in Cairns. I think they've proven the competition is better when Gold Coast is better. So I think it's good to have them playing well. If that's what, for whatever reason, I think everyone's still a little bit unsure as to why, but they play well up there. Give them the games. They haven't made finals in 14 years. It's in the best interest of the competition to do it. And you're also growing the game.
People love it up there. They love footy. I've lived there for just under a year. People love footy in Darwin.
Yeah, 100%. So I think it's incentive for everyone to give them more games up there. Broome, I suppose, is an untapped market. That might be a job for Freo or West Coast, or perhaps a third Western Australian team. But you've got to be the first person in the world to say Gold Coast should play in Broome. And I actually like it.
One game.
I'm happy for it. I want to see Gold Coast play in Broome. Let's get the Suns or the Crocs or the Buffaloes, as Max said. We'll get them playing in Broome.
Yeah.
The Broome Buffaloes.
I don't know about Broome having their own team. But this all comes back to the 20th license. It's got to be a team. It's got to be a competition of 20 teams. It can't be 19. That gets thrown around all the time.
No, and I think the AFL knows that. I think there'll be a third team probably introduced. Sorry, not a third team.
A 20th.
20th team.
My view on that is Canberra. That's I think Canberra is the go.
WA.
Third team in WA. I think
very controversial.
Yeah. I also like the fact that national competition, let's make it national. So let's include Darwin. I don't think Darwin doesn't have the the population for a standalone team, but Gold Coast hasn't really worked. Let's not shaft Gold Coast, but let's lessen the burden on Gold Coast. Have a team up north. Have a team in Canberra, in between Victoria and Sydney, in between the two code wars, NRL and AFL. AFL will take a bit of ground in Canberra, expand the game there, grow it. They'll take Canberra. There'll be a AFL territory, and slowly, it's going to be an AFL competition across the whole country, and AFL will be dominant.
Yeah,
that's just my grand view.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I think everyone would love the idea of a Northern Territory team, but I think the business decisions make it hard at the moment. If the AFL is willing to take them on board, then that would be great. As you said, it's good for the competition. It gives them their state aside. You can probably split them between playing in the Alice and playing in Darwin. Spread it all across the Northern Territory. So it'll be interesting. I think Perth mainly, Perth, Western Australia, they have proven they have the market and the support base. They consistently get 45,000, 50,000 to every game they have at the stadium, which is great. And that's despite West Coast and Freo not having overly great seasons the last 3 or 4 years.
Great point.
So I think they have the market for it. I think in Adelaide, it's not close, but it's not terribly far off, but it's not as good as what Perth have. And I think just pure numbers in their population tell you they're probably not going to get enough numbers to make it a genuine decision for the AFL to place one there. Canberra, I think GWS sort of have that market. Quickly tapping on what you've got. While GWS is still growing, that might be a question for a 22-team competition. We're talking 10, 15, 20 years, like a long time down the road. I think there is room for a team, but just not now. But no one's even mentioned a 22-team competition, and that's completely fair because it's so long. But I think
we don't have the talent for 22 teams. That's the other.
Now. Certainly not now.
Maybe
I think in 20 years' time.
Okay, yeah, I don't mind it.
Eventually, you see it. It will happen eventually. Mark this down. 2050, lock it in. You have teams across. You have the Broome Buffaloes. You have the Northern Crocs. You have the Gold Coast Suns. You have the Canberra Politicians. You have everyone.
Also have their own team.
But yeah, I just think that if this is a very big picture statement, but I think if you're just looking at it really, really long term, you don't want to put a team or a state or a city into a competition too soon, because eventually population numbers tell you that there is going to be enough people to facilitate a team in some of these states, and you don't want to burn it too early. As we've seen with not that they've burnt Gold Coast, but they've taken a long time to sort of build their club. So you don't want too many liabilities in the competition. Not that there's many at the moment, but
that's why I like your Perth suggestion, because they've got money as well.
That's why it worked. For the AFL, I think it makes the most sense. If you're going to have a 20s team, put it in Perth, and you know that there's going to be support behind the team.
Yeah.
You don't know there's going to be the same sort of support in other places across Australia.
Yeah, agree. That's it's a good topic. It's a good conversation. Anyway, Fawkes, brilliant stuff. Thanks for your words and contributions. Brilliant to have you on board. So thanks very much, mate.
Thank you for having me, Maxie. I appreciate it. It's always good getting back behind the microphone.
Absolutely. Well, there you
Chewing
go.
some fat.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend, and hope you have a good week. And that's a wrap up. Cheers.